All right. This is Infosec Decoded number 41, PrintNightmare, and we're starting with Kaitlyn, who has Microsoft signing a rootkit.
Yes. Okay. What's going on here? Ars Technica has an article by Dan Gooden, I believe.
Dan Gooden, great. He actually took some of my classes years ago.
Oh, excellent. I'm glad that some of my articles, circle back in some way to us. Okay, awesome. So yeah, Dan wrote an article for Ars Technica talking about how Microsoft digitally signed a rootkit. No one knows how this happened. So there's this rootkit being thrown around, and what it does is it eavesdrops on SSL connections. So basically, when you connect over the internet to a secure website, like it's HTTPS, it uses an encryption. In this case, we'll just call it SSL, right? Even though nowadays it's TLS, we're just keep calling it SSL. So it has these secure connections over the internet. And what this rootkit does is it decrypts them and eavesdrops on people's secure communications. And no one knows how this happened. Microsoft wrote, Microsoft is investigating a malicious actor distributing malicious drivers within gaming environments. The actor submitted drivers for certification through the Windows Hardware Compatibility Program. The drivers were built by a third party. We have suspended the account and reviewed their submissions for additional signs of malware. So basically, Microsoft's like, we don't know.
Yeah, well, it took me like 6 months to get a code signing certificate, and it's the same thing. You have to kind of convince them that you're okay. And if you're sort of sleazy and suspicious looking like me, it takes a while, but it's really just a matter of social engineering,
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why people would think getting the driver signed would be more difficult than getting malware on the Google Play Store.
Or it's more difficult than that.
I mean, not necessarily. I mean, as long as you can convince Microsoft you're not distributing malware for some reason, they're not going to know that your completely new binary is malware.
Well, yeah, but I mean, Google doesn't hardly screen the Play Store at all. I think it's comparable to getting malware in the Apple Play Store.
But that's not hard either.
Well, it's a little harder, but you're right. It's not that hard. None of it's that hard. It's really the same as like sneaking into a party you haven't been invited to.
Yeah, I mean, if there are no known IOCs, you develop this malware from scratch.
Yeah.
You can just throw it anywhere. No one's going to know what to look for, especially if you're clever. And maybe I shouldn't go into details about how to do this, but
yeah. Well, the main part though, I think, is Apple tries to make sure who you really are, and after they catch you, you're banned. So that's a punishment.
Right, and I'm sure Google would try to ban.
Well, Google too. I didn't put it in the news articles, but Google's just changing their system to be much more closely resemble Apple. Starting, I think, in August, all Google Play apps are also going to have to be signed by Google, and the private keys will be controlled by Google. So they're imitating the Apple Store, which I think is probably a big step forward. Anyway, all right, then we got Irvin with Windows 11.
Speaking of, Microsoft is finally firing back at Apple in a new way. So you know how with Apple, all their products intermingle together in one nice walled garden ecosystem? Well, Microsoft is trying to do the same thing with Windows 11 and every device that can run anything Windows related, including the thing that we just mentioned of getting Android apps to work in Windows natively. They're trying to sway people back to Windows.
Of course, the problem is Google controls the Android Play Store, so they seem to have made a poor plan here, where part of their business plan relies on enemy cooperation.
Yes, that's exactly. Well, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
This is very much like the Democrats that want to make everything bipartisan, and Republicans are, oh, thanks, gee, so I'm still in charge, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening right now.
Yeah, I know, because I heard the article I read about the Google Play Store is that after they make this change, this stuff will not be able to run on Windows 11 anymore. So I immediately tried to get my Windows 11 to play Android apps, and I couldn't do it. They haven't got that working yet, and it looks like that's going to be harder than they think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, we'll see how it all goes. That would be perhaps the killer app to make you buy Windows 11, I guess, that it really interoperates with Android better. Other than that, I don't see any reason to get it.
Exactly.
Anyway, so Sajeev is a guest here. Welcome, Sajeev. And you've got something about Xboxes.
Yeah, so recently we've been getting this kind of like weird thing where this so back in 2017 this new person, his first day on the job in Microsoft in Redmond, Washington. His name is like Volodymyr, but I don't know how to pronounce that, but he just goes by Vova for short. But yeah, so he got a gift card for Christmas one day along with like 300 others, and they got like $300 or something. Um, yeah, so he eventually found a simple bug how to actually. Um, I really don't know how to explain it, but it's basically he can like redeem a lot of codes all at once, so he can get more money and basically more discounts. Um, so basically, I believe Microsoft was kind of like under his like kind of like attack uh, radius. So uh, clearly we don't know like what actually happened, but later in like 2019, there's investigators that came into his newly acquired home. He was searched because there has been some reporting of some codes being leaked, and they were able to basically grab the identification of him. So he was basically on constant watch for basically up until now.
Yeah, yeah. So he was an engineer and just figured out how to game the system from the inside to sell the gift cards. Yeah. Stole 10 million bucks, I think. The part I
Yeah.
didn't quite get is he's now apparently being extradited to some other nation. I'm not sure from where. So I don't know where he is or whether he's actually going to end up in prison or not.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, makes sense. Microsoft caught him stealing as an insider. And Alan's got these Google scorecards. What do you think of them?
Well, Google Scorecard seems like an awfully good idea. And this is actually the second iteration. This is version 2. And this addresses the supply chain attacks that a lot of software depends on various open source projects, open source dependencies. And these open source projects, sometimes they are well run, well maintained, and well coded and relatively secure. And sometimes they really aren't at all, because most open source projects are run by volunteers who have real jobs and can only do so much. And yet they're still oftentimes foundational pieces of other more complex projects. So what this Google project does, Scorecards project attempts to address, is look at the security of these dependencies and allows them to better analyze these projects for any kinds of vulnerabilities. And it's rather complete. I've not tried using this myself, but it does a number of things, such as identifying malicious contributors, analyzing the code itself, looking at various bad dependencies. So it seems to be very complete, actually. And it's already been used to identify, or rather, evaluate over 50,000 open source projects.
Yeah, they ought to run it on the Google Play Store.
Yeah, this is true. This is
I'd
true,
like
but
to-
it's a good start. You know,
Yeah.
it's a really good start, and it's not just a simple fuzzer. Not that fuzzers are simple themselves, but you know, this is a very complex undertaking, and it's not like this one tool will address all the shortcomings of the system, but at least it does aid in improving the security of these open source projects out there.
Yeah, I've been hearing about this for 10 years. Mudge with his cyber UL listing. There should be some mark on a product you buy telling you whether it meets a certain minimum standard. So we'll see how well it goes.
Yeah.
What I noticed is you just have to run some command line tool on the things one by one to get the score. So
Right.
they're not like sticking it on the box where you can clearly find it.
Yeah, and even for the end user who doesn't bother to use this tool, one thing that they're talking about doing is adding badges,
Yeah.
scorecard badges. So this is something that open source projects can display on their GitHub,
Yeah.
that they've got the badge and that they are scorecard approved.
See, that would be a lot better. I'd like to see it like Dolphin Safe Tuna, where an average consumer can see that this meets a certain standard,
Right.
that would be much more effective, I think. And then, of course, you could argue that the tests are really cursory, but you got to have something, because so many of them have ridiculous problems like unchangeable default passwords or something stupid like that.
Yes.
Anyway, all right. And then, all right, so Trump, the team Trump has made yet another social network. This one is called Getter. And this one is amazingly ripping off Twitter. So much they say you can log in with you can tell it to bring in your Twitter contacts, and it will make duplicates of all your Twitter contacts and accounts on there that appear to be following you, although they won't be actually populated with real people. And of course, all the suggested topics are far right-wing stuff. And people said as soon as you join, you look at the trending topics, and like 2 of the 5 are basically kill the N-word to get rid of black people, because who else would be on this platform except the raving MAGA racists. And then, so it scrapes a bunch of data right out of Twitter. You can import all your tweets into it, so it's just like Twitter. And they already have a content moderation crisis, of course. Not only did they find all sorts of ridiculous security flaws, like like hard-coded passwords are in the source code. They also found everybody immediately started attacking it. They have the content moderation policy, which is just what they claim not to have, which is just copied from Twitter, essentially. And all kinds of people begun spamming it with stuff to be offensive. Again, those pictures of K-pop stars and other more offensive things. And they're now trying to decide how to clean out the offensive stuff. So it seems to be going down in flames already. And one big clue is Donald Trump didn't join. They made an account for him, but he didn't join yet, because I think he's been burned enough times on this stuff. He's waiting to see if this is actually going to work. And apparently it is not going to work. It's going down in flames already. But anyway, they're trying to make that much advertised right-wing social network that Trump promised to replace Twitter and Facebook that banned him. And they're finding, again, that it's not so easy to just make a social network. You can't just, clone somebody else's code and turn it on. It doesn't work that well. Anyway, so then we got Liz. Oh, she's not here. So we'll go on to Kaitlyn, NSA, with the brute force cyber campaign. Yeah, I saw that.
Well, what's interesting here, okay, so let's back up. So the NSA has an article talking about a brute force global cyber campaign, yes. But what's interesting is that sometimes they'll say, we're seeing brute force attacks, or these attacks coming from such and such a country, or such and such APT groups. They're saying right now, it's the GRU, it's the GRU that's doing these attacks. So this is not like, and they're pretending like, so apparently the way that a lot of these government groups do their attacks is they try to blend in with the other, criminal hackers, pretending, oh no, we're just doing the brute forcing to try to get money like the other criminals, we're not GRU. But apparently the NSA knows that this is the Russian government targeting the United States mostly. And they're using not like super sophisticated 0-day attacks that like no one knows about. They're brute forcing passwords and usernames, which is totally like Russian, like A+. Exactly what I expect from the GRU. And yeah, let's see. So there's a, malicious actors, this is the article in quotes, malicious cyber actors use brute force techniques to discover valid credentials, often through extensive login attempts. Sometimes with previously leaked usernames and passwords. So they're, password spraying and using password reuse. And then there's something about what they're targeting in the article. Right, okay, so here we go. So the article says, and I quote, targets have been global, but primarily focused in the United States and Europe. Targets include government and military defense contractors, energy companies, higher education, Sam. So City College might be targeted by the GRU. Let's see, logistics companies, law firms, media companies, political consultants, political parties, and think tanks. So they're the only difference from the standard cyber criminals we see is the fact that they're really not targeting things like banks or just companies in general trying to get money out of them. They're really targeting political organizations or higher education for some reason, because I don't know.
Yeah, I think the only newsworthy thing is that the NSA is announcing this. I mean, everybody already knew that everybody was doing this kind of attack anyway, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was already assumed to be true, but
I
now
know.
the NSA is saying, "Hey, no, this is the GRU doing it."
Well, yeah.
That's
I mean,
yeah.
one of the beginning things you do is just turn on an SSH server and watch the logins, and within a few seconds, you'll start getting the brute force attacks. So,
But yeah, but you don't know if that's just regular cyber criminals. You don't know if that's security researchers. You don't know if it's me. I mean, it's
yeah.
likely me.
Well, see, I don't know who it is. One thing I've noticed is they use really screwy passwords that are not totally in what I would think is the top 10. But anyway, all right. Yeah, well, that's why I think the interesting part here is that they openly blame the Russian military instead of using some euphemism or saying they can't attribute it. So I think it reflects the Biden administration's much more hostile attitude towards Russia. Whereas, if the Trump administration would certainly not have blamed Russia for this. Anyway, and Irvin's got these Netgear vulnerabilities from Microsoft.
Yeah,
Which I heard
Microsoft.
some people try to say that Microsoft did this to try to divert the press away from their vulnerability, but perhaps that's overly cynical.
That might be cynical, but from my personal experience with Netgear, I am not surprised that there's another vulnerability.
Yeah.
I've actually been in the market for a new device to replace the Netgear in my house because I don't like it. So seeing another vulnerability for it, I'm not surprised. Is it diverting from another vul? Maybe, but to me, it's just another thing, another reason why get off of Netgear.
Yep. And so they had a couple of vuls. They can actually get like remote code execution, right?
Yes.
Yeah, this happens at a lot of those small routers. I mean, so you really have to keep your eye on them. Most of the ones you're using. And I saw they're actually doing something about those storage devices we talked about in the last podcast. That company that somebody will wipe out all the data on your storage device. They will now actually help you get it back. So that's something.
Yep.
Did Netgear patch this yet?
I don't think they have.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem. I mean, people make stuff and sell it, and they don't realize it's sort of like having a child. You've got these endless expense of taking care of it after you think the transaction is over.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. And Sajeev has got the Colonial Pipeline. Go ahead.
Yes. So we seen some time ago in like May, there's been like this kind of outage on Colonial Pipeline. Well, unfortunately, they had a ransomware attack from this group called DarkSide. So, and they were kind of like in this like rush because they're like the largest oil company stretching from Houston to New York. So basically, their computers got hacked and they couldn't unlock it. So how are they supposed to send information where the gas would go? So unfortunately, all the gas stations in the South just stopped working, and then it just kind of spread all over the United States. So it was kind of bad. So later, it was discovered that they paid like a $5 million ransom to DarkSide, and then they were going to begin operations later. But unfortunately, people in the other states, like in Michigan and even in Washington, they were kind of like not so sure about how this will work. So like even the CEO of like the American Petroleum Institute, they were kind of like thinking like, should we like shut the pipeline in Michigan for consumers in both Michigan and Canada? Yeah, it was kind of a messy situation. So
Well, yeah, I mean, it hit big news at the time. It's actually worth bringing this up again because I think this is a huge step forward, like 9/11. This is when America really suffered a major cyber attack that really hurt us, probably comparable to Stuxnet on Iran. And it might be that we'll actually start doing something more to protect ourselves. There was some talk of forming a congressional committee or something at this time. So
right, it kind of relates to like what happened in 2012 with Saudi Aramco. They suffered like the world's largest oil cyber attack from Iran. So
yeah, that's why I think for years they've talked about cyber being a top priority for national security, and we're still trying to figure out how to address it. But certainly, I think increasing number of people are thinking the military needs to get involved to protect us from this kind of attack. It's not right to just expect every private company to try to mount their own defenses. So we'll see what happens.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. And Alan's got the Humble Bundle.
Humble Bundle, and it's the 2021 Packed Cybersecurity Bundle, which is 24 different books for the grand price of $18. I'm not shilling this. I'm not trying to push anyone to buy this, but it looks like a pretty good selection of cybersecurity related books. Packed was formerly, in my opinion, not a very good publisher of technical books, but I think they've improved a lot over the past few years. And I know they've published some of your work, Sam, and they also just recently published Dan Borges, our recent guest's book. So that is definitely a couple of things to recommend them. And looking at this selection of books, most of them I've never seen before, but I know that they do have at least one good one, Practical Mobile Forensics, which is co-authored by a SANS forensics instructor. So, and I've seen that book before. I've looked at it before, and it seems to be a good one there. So something to check out, something to consider.
Yeah, you can't beat the price. This reminds me, I think it's really not worth writing a book. There's no money in
it. Yes.
Within a couple
maybe not
years,
for the author. No.
Within a couple of years, you're in the cutout bin like this. They're selling your book for like less than $1.
Yeah, right.
And this particular group, most of the money goes to charity anyway. So I mean, the authors probably get 1 penny. But anyway, that's why I remember.
Well, you know, Humble Bundle used to allow the user to donate all of the purchase to charity, but they just stopped doing that. And in fact, they made it more difficult for the purchaser to adjust the distribution of the funds.
Well, you can still give like 70% to charity. So
yes.
The end result is there's not much money in it. And I noticed, by the way, they have Learn Kali Linux 2019, which is,
yeah.
I think what they're doing here, that's the problem with technical books. After like 2 years, they're out of date and worthless.
Right. Yeah. And they've got books in here that were published in 2017.
Well, that's why they're selling them so cheap. This used to be the same thing with rock music. You'd sell your record in a couple of years, it'd be in the cutout bin for like $1.
Right.
Where I got all mine anyway. All right. So such is life. All right. And then so Facebook is trying to do something, or they're trying to appear to have done something, probably much more about extremism, because they push everyone into far right wing craziness, which I think everybody who's on the Democrat side in America is sort of horrified as more of your friends sort of get sucked into this insane cult, and you lose family members and friends because all they'll do is talk about how crazy stuff, how Hugo Chavez hacked the election or some crazy and vaccine is going to kill you and stuff like that. And so Facebook wants to not be responsible for this, or at least not be held responsible. So now it'll pop up a box saying, your friend might be becoming an extremist. You should intervene. I'm like, you think I'm going to do something? Or you just viewed extremist content. It might be poisoning you. You should go drink a glass of milk or something. Anyway, I'm dubious this will do any good, but it might be something Facebook can wave in front of like an angry congressional committee saying, we tried to stop people from becoming extremists. See, we popped up an alert before sending this exciting page of anti-vax propaganda covered with ads. So anyway, I think Facebook was worried that they were actually going to face antitrust action, and it looks like they won't. But anyway, it is part of a huge problem. These social networks push people into extreme content to get more clicks, and that makes people crazy as a side effect. It looks like nothing's going to be done about it anytime soon. Anyway, so then Kaitlyn has got the PrintNightmare, the big one.
Yes, this is the big one. We
Did
saved
you
the
get
best.
this working? I tried to get it working and I couldn't get it working. Did you?
I have not even tried. Yesterday, I spent the entire day looking over TPMs, which, by the way, yes, I will. Today, I'm writing some stuff up for you, Sam.
Great.
Anyway, so yeah, printer nightmare. So what happened? Okay, so a Bleeping Computer has this article. Oh gosh, I will screw up this name so badly. Looks like Ionut Lascu, which, okay. I'm sorry I messed up your name. Anyway, so yeah, there's this bug, PrintNightmare. It's another print spooling bug. So Windows keeps having these bugs in Windows. So Microsoft has these bugs in Windows regarding printing for some reason. I don't know why this is. Every so often there's some printing bug that allows privilege escalation, and this one's pretty bad. And so yeah, you can get system through the print spooler again. But what's really interesting about this is that it was discovered by a security firm, and they were really responsible, and they decided not to release it right away. And then it was patched Tuesday. and Microsoft said they patched some printing stuff or something, and so they finally released it and said, hey, look at what we found. This is the thing. But it turned out that Microsoft didn't actually patch it. So now there's all this 0-day code running around. Everyone has access to it. They got picked up by another Chinese researcher who can now exploit it as well. And yeah, if you get access to a Windows server, you can just run this code and apparently get system access.
Yeah, you can escalate from a domain user account, but then you escalate to system control the domain controller, or so they say, although I've been unsuccessful in my attempts to run this, but people say it works if you get the right POC and run it correctly, which I apparently have not succeeded in doing.
Yeah.
And so they say you need to stop the PrintSchooler on all your Windows servers until further notice, although Microsoft finally admitted this is real and assigned a new number today. So maybe they'll have another patch.
Yeah. So yeah, that's exactly what you're supposed to do. If you have if you are running a Microsoft server, I don't know why you would, but if you are, you would want to disable the PrintSchooler.
Well, there are reasons to run a Microsoft server.
I know, I'm kidding.
I know.
The vast majority of servers have, well, I don't know if the vast majority, but corporate servers for on-prem servers are almost always going to be Microsoft.
Yeah, you do it for Active Directory and group policy and all that good stuff, which Linux totally doesn't provide. Anyway, yeah, so another Microsoft disaster. And if you get that working, that'll be like, I think the new MSO867, that'll be the go-to for take every CTF or you take over any Windows machine.
Yep.
There will be a Metasploit module for it soon, I'm sure. So
Then even lame people like me might be able to make it work. That would be nice. Anyway, all right, let's see. That was now we're down to Intuit with Irvin.
Yes, they are going to share their data, their payroll data, with Equifax. The same Equifax who had that wonderful breach that exposed so much information way back in the day. Now, this isn't necessarily a new thing because companies do share payroll data with like ADP, and ADP shares it with somebody already.
I mean, did we agree to that when we signed up for Intuit? I don't remember agreeing to that.
There's going to be a change in the terms of service. They'll get, anybody who's running QuickBooks will get that pop-up saying, hey, in order to continue using this, you will automatically be part of this this work number service powered by Equifax.
And what is the benefit to the customer?
Who knows?
I mean, most of them actually have like a boilerplate statement. We may share your data with business partners, which I guess would cover this.
Yeah, let's see. Looking at their terms of service thing, your employees may need to verify their income and employment info when applying for things like loans, credit, public aid. They'll be automated.
Okay.
Those things will now be automated through Equifax at no additional charge.
Yeah, this makes a lot of people worry about their credit history, and this seems like more of that. Anyway.
Just a bit.
All right. And then, all right. And Sajeev has got the Fastly outage. I remember this one.
Yeah, so on June 8th, there was this Fastly outage. Yeah, so it's kind of bad because a lot of people were using Zoom at that time. And as we probably already know, Zoom is a client for Fastly. So yeah, basically there was a disruption that caused the servers to like malfunction, and then they just closed down their network for like 50 minutes approximately. So yeah, it was kind of hectic. Basically what kind of happened, there was like this they introduced this new software, right? But however, a customer, it pushed a weird valid configuration change that included like some specific like parameters that triggered like that kind of bug in the program, and then like 85% of the network just started returning like extreme errors. So yeah, it was not that fun. And yeah, so unfortunately Zoom was also kind of like in that reach of being affected too. But
Zoom
luckily
will stop working when Fastly is down?
Yes, some Zoom servers were kind of like okay, but majority was kind of like so yeah, basically their servers kind of like went down a bit, but like ultimately like 50 minutes later, a lot of services began to like reorganized itself, and then like a few hours later they finally fixed the bug. So
Yeah, you know, I noticed this is a pretty miserable explanation. One thing I really like about Cloudflare is when Cloudflare makes a mistake, they really explain exactly what happened and exactly how they fixed it. And this is better than nothing. Like one other common response is to just lie and pretend it didn't happen or blame it on an outside attack. But anyway, they don't really give you much detail here. Anyway, still,
partially.
it's nice that at least they come clean and admit it was their own mistake and don't try to pretend it was outside or something.
Right.
So I give them like a C+ on their instant response notification here.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. And let's see. Then we've got, I'm the last one. Okay, with the tiny nuclear reactors. I thought this is awesome. So they're making nuclear batteries. This is the new hot thing. Instead of trying to make a gigantic nuclear plant, which it turns out will take like 10 or 15 years to clear all the regulatory hurdles and everything, they now want to make nuclear batteries, which are little plants that fit inside a standard shipping container or in a little tiny cute A-frame house designed by artists to be like appealing as it sits on the hill glowing with radioactive fire. And the idea is you will have little ones of these everywhere to run like just one college campus or one neighborhood or something instead of giant nuclear plants. And they're hoping these can be generated really fast. And the idea is you'd make it like in a factory, you'd make all the nuclear stuff, including the fuel, you'd ship it someplace. And when they're done like a battery, you just ship it back for renewal so it doesn't emit any waste and you don't have to service it or anything. And you don't have to have any staff like Homer Simpson on premise to see if it's blowing up. So this might work. I mean, this is, everybody's talking about nuclear now. When I was a kid in the 70s and 80s, people were afraid of nuclear for environmental damage. But I think, especially now, considering the heat wave, people are beginning to think what really matters is global warming, and a little bit of nuclear waste is not really what we're worried about. So getting rid of all the fossil fuel and going to nuclear is becoming a more appealing option now. And this may be the way that we do it.
Well, it seems like it may be a stopover gap, like the same way the compact fluorescent light bulbs were those, like, you know, that midway point between where we are now with the LEDs and the old incandescents. Like we knew we had to get rid of the incandescents. Yeah. And the CFLs kind of sucked, but they're the only thing we had at the time until we got something better. So,
that may be. I mean, of course, it'd be better if we used all renewable, I suppose, but it'll take us a while to get there. Although the renewables are coming up. I was surprised when that power outage in Texas occurred, and they said like 20% of the Texas grid is already running on renewables. So, yeah, I think, but we certainly need to knock off the fossil fuels really fast. This environmental consequences are really getting out of hand.
All right, communist. All right, comrade. One thing at a time, Sam.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. Well, that's it for this one, and we'll be back on Tuesday. Have a good weekend, folks.